Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I've said it a bunch of times now. I think I really enjoy it when people don't agree with me. Maybe enjoy is not the right word, but as I make videos and we have discussions, people keep me on my toes, and so I enjoy that. And even just maybe not agreeing, but just having different perspectives. So that's cool. So I thought I was going to talk about something else because I'd really like to start talking about some more game style preference in terms of the big model. Stuff that I didn't really think about an awful lot until later. But it's funny, the Facebook discussion we had on the video I made about the game is what, or the story is what the players did, or what the characters did. This guy Jim Lloyd, I actually had a good point, and we were had a teeny chat, I guess if you can call it a chat, about isn't the game doesn't the game belong to the DM too? And the idea that maybe there should be some kind of contract where the game master promises not to railroad the players entirely, but at the same point the players promise not to completely derail all the preparation work that the DM did. And so we had a bit of a discussion about that. It's funny, like I fall into the camp where I don't care if it goes off the rails. I don't want there to be any rails at all. I felt, I can feel the pain, because it's funny. I had a discussion with Tim Harper, with Samwise 7 RPG, where he actually had an online, chat that was live. I didn't know it was going to be live, but that's how it turned out. But we're talking about there's a fine line, at least for me, in terms of game preparation. Like, how much do I want to prepare? And part of the reason is, too little preparation, leads to chaos and inconsistency. I have to go back from time to time, figure out, well, what happened, and it invites the danger of me not being consistent, and not just people's names, but the entire whatever else is going on in the world. And internal consistency of the world is very important to me as a game master and as a player too. But too much preparation, that can lead to some what I called in the discussion is like unhealthy emotional investment in your creation as a game master. And I've certainly had this happen over and over again, even now, just in my head with games that I haven't actually run yet. And Tim and I were talking about this idea. You get this idea in your head for weeks, and I said, well, no, dude, it's months sometimes. And you think, well, this would be really cool. You get some kind of cool concept, some cool premise, because I'm a sucker for a premise. Most of my favorite books and stories and whatnot, it's about the premise. Whether the execution sucks or not is less important to me than, I like the premise. So I'll come up with some idea, which I think is, awesome, cool, and then say I'll actually put the work into, like, write it all down, maybe flesh some stuff out, and then the players ignore it. They don't interact with it. I'm like, well, hey, wait a minute. And the emotional inclination or the knee-jerk reaction is, at least in my head, is just, want to somehow railroad them in one way or another, convince them that they need to go and interact with this, item or thing or situation because that was going to be cool. And, as a game master, I found that you have to let it go. And, what you thought was going to happen, what you thought was going to be really nifty, might not just happen. And that's, one of those things I've heard people talk about, the rule of cool. And I agree. I'm on the fence about the rule of cool. And what I mean about that is this. If it would be cool for something to happen, like when a person has a really novel idea and they're going, say they're not pushing the rules, but they're wanting to do things, or where the rules are kind of silent. Sometimes for me, the cool thing to happen, I'm like, okay, well that's cool. I like that because it's cool. Is as long as it's consistent. I had a video about like Wall of Iron, where I kind of came down the side of like because it's so cool, because the person's idea was so awesome. Yeah, that works. However, on the other side of this argument, or whatever you want to call it, I don't know. I'm not sure who was arguing except me. Is the idea that, okay, well, I want something to happen because it would be really cool. I've prepared this nifty thing. There's a magic item that I've come up with for an upcoming campaign, which I really hope the players get their hands on. However, because it's a unique kind of thing. However, the possibility exists that they may find it entirely uninteresting or never even go to where it is. In which case, well, it'll end up in somebody else's hands, or maybe it'll just lie dormant, depending on how things go in the world. And it would be really cool if they, and I've thought about, well, what would happen if they interact with this particular item. So that'd be the rule of cool, right? The cool thing should happen. Well, no, not really, because once again, the story is about what the characters did. It's funny, and I'll stop talking because I don't want this video to be too long. But Jim had mentioned about the idea that isn't the game master just as much of a player as the players are? Because that's the kind of assertion I made somewhere down thread. I said, yeah, the game master is just another player, and yeah. My take is yes, he is. However, the investment in the world isn't necessarily, or what you thought was going to happen in the world really isn't the direction I want to go into. Yeah, sure, I'm invested in the world in terms of making it internally consistent, and there's some certain things that I know are going to happen unless some really incredible stuff on the part of the players happens. And we're talking about like big time world events. We're talking about having the benefit of hindsight. Like in World War II, that Germany is going to invade Poland. That sooner or later that the bomb gets dropped. That sort of thing, because people are working on the bomb. All that kind of junk. Those big things are going to happen in history. Those are the balls that get set in motion. I think that's the analogy or the idiom, whatever it is. That it's going on in the world, but in terms of what happens now, what do the players interact with, regardless of whether it be cool or not, I don't know. I prefer, the story that emerges to be what we're interacting with. So, as I think my final retort was, because I'm going kind of way off on a tangent, is that, yeah, as a game master, when I'm a game master, I'm a player. I'm just a player that gets to play the entire world, but the world that the players focus on. So at any given game session, I'm not sure what that's going to be, but then I get to play that part of the world, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's my take on preparation, which is a long-winded take, but it's one of those things that it's important to prep, as Tim and I were talking about. However, too much preparation in my mind leads to too much, or brings the danger of having too much an emotional investment in what you want it to happen or what you think would be really cool to happen. So that's something that I still need to work on to this day, and just stuff to think about. But anyhow, hopefully I'll make more videos about this particular topic. And if this one was rambly, sorry, but it's me. What do you want?